Folks, hello. It's great to be with you again. I promised last week that we'd talk about distributions for retirement, distributions from the company, distributions for whatever, funds you have set up for retirement, all that kind of IRAs and so forth. Now, before I start, of course, I have to give you our commercial, which we always do, because this is very exciting. We're getting a lot of calls on this. This is just an example. If you're 65 years old, you can get 7.5% for retirement for lifetime. People will say, "Well, how long? I don't know how long you're going to live, or how long your spouse will live if you have a spouse, because it goes on for them until the end of their life. If you pass before he does or she does." Okay, so 7.5%, 100,000 gives you $7,500 paid to you or your spouse for life. Okay, big deal, big deal. All right, so we get a lot of calls. Go find 7.5% anywhere. Pretty hard to find. This is a good deal. Okay, you got CDs that are paying 4 maybe now. Now rates are holding for the moment, but the Fed will drop rates beginning probably in the fourth quarter of the year. But this is a chance to lock in a beautiful, stream of income for your lives. Okay. That's what I want to tell you there, and then we'll go on. Now, I've made a lot of notes here on distributions, and I'm going to go through some of those, word by word. Now, we may not get through the whole section. We'll continue it next week, but I think this is so important. You're approaching retirement, let's say. You have a series of sources for income, and you have to make decisions on when you start the income. Let's say you're a nurse or a teacher or whatever, and you've got a 403B. It doesn't really make a lot of difference. Could be a TSB, could be anything else, 401k. But the interesting thing about 403Bs is that you typically can do an in-service distribution, which allows you to take money out and roll it over or transfer it into another IRA vehicle early on. That may be to your advantage. I help people on those kinds of things, but you study it carefully and decide whether it's to your advantage or not. Sometimes people do those distributions and convert them into Roths at that time, which means they have to pay the taxes on that money before it goes in, but they may decide that that's beneficial. Or they may decide to take part of those distributions and put them into a Roth and let the rest of it go into a regular IRA. That prevents them from having to pay taxes on all of it. These are things that we can discuss. It's hard to remember all these things. Trust me, it's hard for me to remember all these things. There's so many details to everything we do, and the rules change so frequently. Okay, so I have to keep up with all of that. Now remember, I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not a tax person. When I give you comments and so forth on those issues, it's strictly general. It's strictly based on the last, piece of information that I got, but I'm not giving you advice on those things. You need to talk to professionals in those areas. Okay. So what are the objectives in basically doing distributions? Here's some notes I've made. You want to compare the retirement plan distribution choices to help you make the informed decision or decisions. Discuss the strategy to help you remain financially flexible after retirement. You discuss those with your advisor, or you discuss it with your spouse. You discuss it, you talk it around the table so that hopefully you're getting enough input and enough ideas that are going to make you happy in the end, okay? You don't want to regret having done something. All right, and you want to do things that minimize the taxes and avoid penalties on your retirement income. People take money out before they're 59 and a half out of a plan. They're going to pay the taxes and a penalty. You need to be aware of those kinds of things. Most people have a general idea, but you would talk to your tax person ahead of time at least and see what the actual dollar consequences will be for you. Sometimes you have to do it though. Sometimes you got an emergency and you need to do it. Okay, so you need to do it, but you should at least know what the tax consequences are going to be. And explaining, you need to understand the rules for early access. So there's another thing you can do besides the tax issues. You can take money and put it into a 72T. Now, 72T is a rule by the IRS, and I think I covered this in a previous show, but we talk about that where you can take money out and take lifetime income even though you're not 59 and a half. Okay, so that's something else that if you were going to retire early and you wanted some help with that, I can certainly help you with it. And it's not there's no tax penalties. Okay, now let's talk about the different sources on retirement plans. For instance, what's the difference between taking money from a 401k and in a defined benefit? A defined benefit is a pension. Now, a pension has a series of opportunities for you. You know, you can take a pension that is, if you're single, for instance, you might take a pension that pays only you, okay, where there's no carryover to pay, a spouse or something in the event that you pass, okay. So there's a couple of ways that way, and there may be some other opportunities within it. So you want to look at you may be able to start and stop your pension income if you wanted to stop and then restart it. You really want to look at those things, and I have reviewed a lot of pension documents for people through the years and pointed out things that they didn't understand or didn't really notice. So, I'm happy to help you with those things because they'll come to me and say, well, what I should do? I said, well, I got to look at the documents. I got to look at the choices that you're given and so forth, and your circumstance, your actual circumstance. What's going to fit your situation the best? Okay, so that's a defined benefit. That's the pension. All right, minimize the tax. We talked about all that, and then what about? Let's see. What about lump sum distributions? And there are some plans. For instance, there have been, firefighters plans where they can take a lump sum of money in addition to a pension. So when they take the lump sum, of course, that's IRA money. It's got to go into an IRA. So there's all kinds of things like that need to be discussed. And then typically when you take money from a regular plan, whatever it is, a 401k, 403b, etc., you got to roll it over into or transfer it, whatever language you want to use, into an IRA. Now, into an IRA. Now, remember, IRA is an account designation. It's not a product. So people mix that up sometimes. I'll say, well, I've got to put this in an IRA, and they think they're talking about a product. They're not talking about a product because you could have mutual funds, you could CDs, you could have the products that we use, the index annuities. There's all kinds of things that you can put money into that would be an account noted as a IRA. Okay, but it's got to go into an IRA if you want to avoid immediate taxation. Okay, that's something we do all the time and very important to understand. All right, and then in the annuity area, big deal today. Fixed index annuities are the go-to product category for a lot of retirement money today. Okay, because of the fact that you can get lifetime income for you and for your spouse. Okay, in the event that you pass, and also because it'll always guarantee you that it's the same amount of money for the rest of yours and his or her life. Okay, that's a big deal. You don't have to worry about it. It's always going to be there. It's always going to come. And there are some choices in that income that may allow for some inflation protection by increasing the income over time. And some of those are attractive and worthwhile considering, others aren't. So I go through that with you on each and every policy that's available, or that ones that appear to fit your circumstances. Okay, so that's that. And then you want to look at, of course, you're going to look at the tax considerations. You're going to discuss that with your tax person again. And then early retirement. How does early retirement? Well, I talked about the 72 T's, of course. And early retirement particularly affects Social Security, because obviously you can start social at 62. And the question is, is that desirable? Well, let me give you the general rule. If you are not going to work, therefore you're not going to have any income that is taxable or income that is more than the limits in Social Security, which change a lot. I think it's up to around 21,000 that you can still earn and retire 62 and have no penalties. But the real answer is, if you're really not going to work, you want to start it at 62. Generally, why? Why wouldn't I wait till I was 67 or whatever it is until I get full benefits? Because the difference between 62, let's say, and 67, right, is 5 years. That means you've got 60 checks you're not going to receive. And it will take you approximately 9 years to make up for what you lost. Well, the problem, of course, is we don't know how long we're going to live. We don't know how long we're going to live. So that's something to consider in Social Security. And I think I mentioned this before too. But we will be happy to help you with those kinds of questions. And of course, the final issue, or the big long-term issue, is required minimum distributions. What's that? That's the IRA saying you have to take out a certain amount of money out of this plan that was an IRA or whatever it is. Now it's or let's say it was a 401k, now it's an IRA. You've got to take a certain amount of money out beginning at the age 73. Okay, you got to do it. And that money will then be taxed as you take it out, not when you roll it over, which when you start taking income that is now in your control. That is when that money will be taxed. Now, an interesting thing is that if you do one of those pension plans that I'm calling the annuities, which we sometimes refer to as pensions, the income from the pensions, the income from the fixed index annuities is always, with maybe one exception along the way, more than what your required minimum distributions are. So if that's the case, you don't have to actually worry about taking any more money out, to meet your requirements as far as and I'll go through this with you and show you examples of that. But that's a nice thing, because you don't have to worry about taking more money out. You're just getting your regular income, and that's taxable, of course. But you don't have to take any more money out to satisfy the IRS. Okay, so those are some things that you need to really understand and so forth and so on. Now starting back again with the pensions that you're getting from your employer, here's some details. These are entirely employer sponsored, and they're qualified, meaning it's like an IRA. It's going to be taxable. It's before tax money. It's going to be taxable when you get the income. It's tax deferred until you start that, of course. And it's offered typically by public and private employers. Not as many private employers. Back when the ERISA law went into effect in the 70s, people started doing 401ks, which were based on mutual funds. So that money's in the market. But prior to that, when we had pensions, that money was not in the market, generally speaking. So you had the assurance of not losing money, in it. Whereas in the 401ks, etc., you've got the values going up and down. If you get out at the wrong time, well, maybe you've lost money. So that's a different situation. It's sad that so many pensions that were available years ago are no longer available. On the other hand, you have public and also veterans that receive public employment, and veterans that now receive both a pension and an income. So they're getting two things. They've got a couple of things, not in every case, but that's a lot of assurance to people that are fighting a war, or working as a teacher, or working as a first responder. That they don't really watch these things that closely, and they're going to get a pension. Certain number of years they get a pension. That's typical of teachers and these other job categories that I've just mentioned. So that's some other things to think about. And then they're going to get a specified monthly benefit at retirement. So that's to eligible employees. Now, in a pension situation, typically all full-time employees are enrolled, maybe after a period of employment, maybe after a year, whatever it is. So that could vary. Okay, and they're not typically payable if you leave early, or you leave before a certain age, maybe 59 and a half. You're not going to get pension benefits. But there are exceptions to that. For instance, you may become disabled, and that your company your employer might allow you to take pension benefits in that situation. And they may also allow lump sum distributions. You need to really look at the pension plan if you've got a pension and get a copy of it. Get a copy of it, see what applies, see if that can change. Most pensions will lock in the benefits based on the date that you were enrolled in it, but those things may not be. You need to really understand. I have people quoting me things about their pension, and then we study the pension and find out that it's not accurate. Our memories are not perfect, so that's a good thing to think about. And then beyond that, think about things like annuity payments, of course. Now, those are insured in the state of Maryland. Okay, so you want to be aware of that, and I can go over that and limitations on the insurance in the state of Maryland, and so forth and so on. When it comes to the pensions, there's some choices like single life. It's only you. Now, you can take single life even if you're married. I mean, the fact is that's up to the individual employee. Single life is going to pay more than obviously joint and survivor. So joint and survivor is a typical choice, but and probably necessary for most people if they're married, but it's not the only choice. And then there's additional choices in some pensions. You need to become very familiar if you have a pension. What are the choices that you're allowed as far as distributions? And in general, some things to think about is that all pensions are employer sponsored, and I probably said that. And then the benefits are based on what is in that plan. They're not all the same. Could be a percentage of what your earnings are, and it may not start immediately. And so, as far as enrollment, get the ideas. Bring me the documents if you want me to help you understand it. Now, there's another category that we talk about, which is the defined contribution. That's your 401k, 403b, TSP, the 957s, whatever yours is called. But that's a defined contribution. That's where you're putting a certain amount of money in, and there may be a match by your employer. So you're putting money in on a regular basis. Typically, every payday, some money goes in there. There is a limitation, a total limitation, which keeps changing. What you can put into a 401k. So let's say hypothetically you're putting in $150 a week, but the annual limit is a lot higher. You can find out in your plan what is the maximum that you can put into it. And they're not going to match that, of course. A lot of people put money in to meet the match that the employer is going to give them. So they get to a certain level. And and that's what you want to think about. What is the limit? What's the limit for the match? I mean, how much you have to put in to get the match, and how much is the match? Is it worth worrying about? If the match is 6% or 4% or whatever it is, then you make the decision. A lot of people, that will be their objective, to get that amount of money in to get that match. Okay, so that's the way that works. Now, they're employer sponsored. And they're qualified retirement, so it's all IRA money. They use outside providers, platforms. There's a lot of companies that do this for the employee or do it for the employer. So it isn't the employer holding the money. It's the outside firm that's holding it, whether it's Vanguard or Fidelity, T. Rowe Price, whoever it is that's actually facilitating the situation. And they are required on an annual basis to provide you with some advice. Now, I don't think they all do it, but that's what the requirement has always been in the ERISA laws. It says that the holders of the money will be responsible for providing some advisory help to each individual on an annual basis. They may do it as a group. They may hand outlines and choices and various things, but they are required. May or may not happen, but they are required. Okay, so that's something you want to be aware of. Let's see, the employee or the employer may contribute to the employee's account. So employers are not required to do any matching. That's a benefit that they may provide you. Okay, so those are some of the things that I want you to remember, and in this area as far as distributions. And remember, and I just have a lot more we're not going to get through today. But I'll give you a few more points. But you can always come and see me. You know, my number is 410-902-0464, Mike Newmeyer, and I'm right here in Owings Mills. I have a lot of people coming, from from Westminster, coming from, Finksburg, different places like that, Eldersburg. They're coming from Towson. They're coming from Baltimore City even. I have some people in Gettysburg. In fact, I had some people down here yesterday from Gettysburg. So people come here from a lot of different places, and I love to help people. That's my forte, is helping people. I help a lot of people. You never believe the number of people that I've worked with, but I've been in business for 26 years. So, time is what accumulates a lot of folks. I've had some people that have been with me that long, of course. Then I've had people that have moved away and are still with me. And I love to help you. I got a lot of experience. I think in this business, experience is the main thing, because it takes a long time to understand the various needs of people and to understand how the products fit their needs. And that's our job. Our job is to find the right, platforms and products that actually help you get what you want in retirement. That's the main thing. Okay, so we talked a lot about distributions today. And next week we're going to talk more, because we have to finish it. We've got to finish. This is too important to not finish. And we'll get along to that. Now let me try to finish a little bit more before we end our session. Okay, changing jobs. What do you change a job and you got a 401k with the job you're leaving? What do you do with that? Well, you can then, if you're changing jobs, you can roll that over to an IRA. If you roll it over to one of the products that we're talking about, oftentimes it's very beneficial. For instance, if you're old enough to start income on it, then my advice is start the income. You may say, I don't need the income. Well, that's interesting. But if you take a lifetime income product like this is, it's the sooner you start taking the income, the more money you're going to get out of it, because it's lifetime. If you're going to live this long, you're going to get it this long. If you're going to live it this long, you're going to live it you're going to get it that long. So the earlier you start it, the more money you're going to get out of it, basically, or your spouse if you pass. So you can't lose on that sort of a thing. So we tell people, if you're old enough, if you're 60 years old, you can start taking income from one of these plans. Remember, Mike Newmeyer, 410-902-0464. I'd love to work with you on some of these things. So if you want to roll it over, or you want to do it defined, or if you want to do an in-service distribution, which allows you to do the very same thing I just described. Okay, so what about, so that's if you change job, do the right thing. And other people will say, well, I can still leave it in my 401k. You can do that if it's allowed by that plan. So you let the employer, you still have it there and you haven't rolled it over. You may be able to do that. Is it doing well for you? And if it's doing well for you, when is it not going to do well for you? In other words, if you're going to retire in a long time out, 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is, you got to say to yourself, is this going to hold up? Am I going to be able to count on this when I'm ready for retirement? Am I conservative and don't want to take that risk and roll it over? Put it into one of these things where you can never lose money and where you'll have lifetime income. Okay, so today, interestingly enough, I would say that more people that I see than altogether, more people that I see are more conservative than they were 5 years ago, before COVID. Really, they weren't as conservative then. Then they went through COVID and became more conservative. The thing about being conservative is you are conserving your money. That's what we're talking about. The older you are, the less risk you want to take, because you're facing retirement down here and you want to have some money to retire on. So I would say that this is always a good option, and it's a great option primarily for retirement, to get ready for retirement, to use in retirement, to have that constant money coming in every month. Okay. And then, so you're changing jobs, all right. And then if you're retiring or changing jobs, it's basically the same thing you want to do. But you can't make contributions after you leave a company. You can continue it possibly with the company, but you can't make contributions to it. So that's something else to keep in mind. And so that's, and then now you're in a new plan. If you change jobs and they have a plan, and they allow you to enroll in it, then you have a new plan. Now you're going to have to watch both of them if you left one at the old place. I have people come in to see me that have an old plan that's 10 years old that they never rolled over, that's sitting there, or they rolled it over to an IRA and they're not watching it, and it may be doing well or may not be doing well. So don't leave old things around and not do anything with them, because what happens is, oh, I'm going to watch it, but they don't. And in the end, it may be not worth what it was when I went in there. So the best thing to do is get it on a track where you know what you're going to get. And that's the kind of thing we always talk about, which is fixed index annuities. So those are some of the things I want you to remember, as we go forward, with distributions. And keep this in mind, an IRA transfers. If you transfer an IRA, and the words transfer and rollover can be very confusing, but it depends on the context. But if you take money and you receive money from an IRA and it's going into another IRA, you're taking the money and putting it into a checking account. You got to get it back into another IRA within 60 days. If you don't, it's taxable. Okay, it's called constructive receipt if you keep it longer than 60 days. So you want to get it in to that new IRA as soon as possible. Basically, you want to know where it's going before you decide you're going to roll it over. You don't want that money sitting in your hand and not make a timely decision. Okay, so we talked about distributions and we covered most of it, although I still have more to talk about, which I will get to next week. And then if we finish that, we're going to go on and talk more about other investments and so forth and so on. So we'll get into things like mutual funds and stocks and bonds and real estate investment trusts and real estate in general and various other things that you may or may not be interested in. I hope this information today has been beneficial. I hope that you enjoyed listening and watching and so forth. And remember, you can always find these topics on our website, okay, Game Plan for Retirement. You can go there and you can find, every week we put them there. And we also, of course, will be our shows at 9:30 every Saturday morning. See, you're watching now or listening now, and I really appreciate that. I really want to help you. One of the great benefits for me is being able to help people. I can look back at the people I have helped, and it's my legacy, and I'd love to help you. Please call me at 410-902-0464. And thank you again for today, and I'll look forward to seeing you next week.